Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Mr. March, and we're going to start Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream today. Um, I think the point of this is to get you past what might be a little bit difficult language, some outdated things, way of reading a story, and kind of get you into the story itself. Because once you get into it, the story is pretty good. It even stands up by like modern standards, and this story was written, 400 years ago. So we're not going to do a huge deep dive into literary devices. We'll stop occasionally and talk about some of them, but really this is for you to be able to, I don't know, understand who these characters are, understand what's going on in this story, and hopefully somewhere along the way actually make it somewhat enjoyable for you. So before we get started, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I recorded an entire 20-minute video that I'm re-recording now, and then found out that the microphone was off. So if that doesn't make you want to front kick a laptop, I don't know what will. But hey, here we are, and we're starting with, I don't know, I guess let's set the scene here. So start of our story, we have the Duke of Athens. His name is Theseus. That's this dude right here. He is set to marry Hippolyta. She's the queen of the Amazons. And just a quick internet search will show you that Theseus is a legendary hero from Greek mythology, considered an early king of Athens. Hippolyta was queen of the Amazons. Hey, historically accurate with Greek mythology. And then the Amazons were a tribe of warrior women believed to live in Asia Minor. So you might be asking yourself, did a teacher just use Wikipedia? Yeah, Wikipedia is just fine for referencing things or quick lookups. Where you want to avoid it is when you're quoting Wikipedia straight through for your research paper. That's probably going to be a bad look. But just looking some stuff up, getting some general information, all good. So Theseus, Hippolyta, they're getting married in 4 days. And the play starts, I guess we should quickly say, the story taking place in Athens, Greece, these being famous characters in Greek mythology, it kind of walks a fine line. There's a literary device known as an allusion, which is hinting at or making a subtle, indirect mention of something, right? Like, it's kind of, you're a little bit smooth about it. Whereas to just be direct is to make mention of something, to actually say it. This kind of walks a fine line because it's pretty much laying it out there for you, but they never directly say, like, hey, these are famous people from Greek mythology. But if you've ever seen Greek mythology, you would absolutely know in a second. So it's kind of like an illusion that they're not super subtle about. So we have Theseus and Hippolyta. They're getting married in 4 days, and we walk into Act 1, Scene 1. And Theseus is, he's like, oh, baby, I can't wait to marry you in 4 days. And, the 4 days are going to take forever. And Hippolyta's like, just be cool. 4 days will pass, it'll be fine. And so Theseus is like, yeah, you're right. And he turns to his right-hand man. It's this dude named Philostrate. And he goes to Philostrate. He's like, hey, I want you to get all the people of Athens. I want them hype. I want them excited. I want everybody ready, and I want everybody in attendance. This wedding in 4 days is going to be the biggest party of the year, decade, century, whatever. 4 days seems a little short notice, but again, hey, it was the time. So no wedding invites are being sent out. He just sends out some dude named Philostrate to tell everybody, hey, whatever you're doing in 4 days, you're not doing anymore because you're coming to the Duke's party. And the Duke, as far as we can tell, is a pretty popular figure. He invites everybody because he is beloved. He has a relationship with his people. And by all, I mean, insofar as we can figure, they're going to be excited about it too. They have a good relationship. This is not some tyrant. So he is excited and wants to share his day with the people of Athens. Now, one other thing worth mentioning here is kind of like the norms of the time in the 1600s. It was not uncommon for people to be married for reasons other than love, especially when we're talking about people who are in positions of power, like Theseus and Hippolyta are, a duke and a queen. These are some high-ranking people. It would not be uncommon for these two to get married, almost like a political arranged type marriage, just to expand their empires or increase their fortunes or something like that. But we get the sense very early on that Theseus is in fact in love with Hippolyta. That should be the norm in today's society, but back then it's worth mentioning because it wasn't always the case. So Theseus is really excited. He wants to share this day with the people of Athens, so he sends Philostrate out. Philostrate goes out, and this dude Egeus comes in. And so Egeus is just a townsperson of Athens, and he walks in with his daughter Hermia and two guys named Lysander and Demetrius. So before we get into what happens here and the he said, she said is going to be fun, it's worth noting that these four are going to be your main characters: Hermia, Lysander, Helena, and Demetrius. We haven't met Helena yet, but I promise we will very shortly. So what you need to know right out the gate is that Hermia is in love with Lysander, and Lysander is in love with Hermia. Great, right? Sounds good. Except this is the 1600s, and it's not how it was back then today. The problem in this situation is that Egeus has promised his daughter Hermia to Demetrius. Yes, we are talking about an arranged marriage. So if that's something that you hear about today in modern society and you're like, wow, really kind of outdated Middle Eastern country that's still doing that, bad idea. And you kind of judge it pretty harshly, right? Like, why would you do that? What happened to free will and all this other sort of stuff? But back 400 years ago, even if your country did not practice this, you still wouldn't really do more than be like, oh, okay, that's how they do it in their country. It was not uncommon to see arranged marriages. So now you see the initial conflict, right? Hermia is in love with one dude. Her father promised her to another dude. And kind of in this situation, there is largely a disregard for women's rights. You see Hermia being treated like a piece of property right out of the gate. There's a quote early in this act where Demetrius says to, he's talking to Lysander, and he says, "Relent, yield thy crazed title to my certain right," right? Like this woman is an object that belongs to me. And similarly, her father Egeus says, "She is mine, and all my right of her I do estate." So you get a sense of the high value they place on women, their opinions, and their rights right out the gate. Super, right? Very liberal, very women's lib. But what's expected at this time is that Hermia would just go along with what her daddy wanted. But Hermia is not doing that. So Egeus comes to the Duke, and he's got a beef with his daughter. And it's like, praise be, Duke. Congratulations on the upcoming wedding. We're excited to be there. I got a beef with my daughter. I want her to marry this Demetrius. He's a good guy. I picked him. And this scumbag Lysander over here, he's hanging outside the window, singing her songs, bringing her treats, stealing her heart. And now she won't listen to me, and she won't obey me like she's supposed to. And Theseus is like, okay. So Hermia, you know that you're supposed to obey your father. His word is law. And they really kind of hammer this point early on, that like, you obey your father in this society. And Hermia's like, yo, no disrespect. I mean none. I just love this dude, and I think Demetrius is kind of a slimeball, so, that's where it's at. And Egeus is like, yo, Athenian law says if my daughter won't listen to me, I get to kill her. That's right, you heard correctly. Athenian law back in the day, way, way back, said that if you did not obey your parents' wishes when it came to marriage, you could be killed. Super. So everybody's really excited right out the gate here. And the Duke, Theseus, is like, true, that is the law. How about a third option, right? Clearly, you don't want to marry Demetrius, and you probably don't want to die. So a third option would be you could become a nun. And, then you don't marry anybody, and, you go give your life to the Lord, and, you go and put on a robe and pray for 60 years, and then you die. And Theseus is like, he's really trying to talk Hermia into just marrying Demetrius, right? Like, it's what your dad wants, it's how it's supposed to be. And there's this really cool little monologue that Theseus gives where I told you we're not going to go heavy into literary devices, but briefly we'll talk about diction. Diction is specific word choice that allows an author to show rather than tell the point they intended to make. And Theseus has this cool extended metaphor. Oh, Jesus, I sound like an English teacher. This is really cool metaphor, you guys. Super awesome. It's one of those moments where you just see Shakespeare showing off his talent with words. Like, I mean, this guy's got the goods. I mean, if we're still talking about him 400 years later, you should know that. But also, like, it's worth stopping every once in a while just to acknowledge one of those spots. So Theseus is talking about what it would be like to become a nun, and he's like, yo, I mean, the nuns are for sure going to heaven, and respect and all that, and it's all good. They got the afterlife. But don't you think maybe you would want to have a family and children and all the good things that come with having a full life here on Earth? And a few different times he makes references that talk about pregnancy or childbearing. He uses the phrase barren sister, and biblically, to be barren is to be without children. He talks about the cold, fruitless moon a line later. The moon is not with or without fruit, but to be fruitless, again, kind of historically, going back biblically, to be fruitless is to be without children. And I think the most obvious of the three, where he's talking about the virgin thorn, right? This is to live a life of virginity as a nun. So Shakespeare lays it on, and then he kind of lays it on smooth with his word choice. Just thought that was worth pointing. So Theseus finishes this speech. He's like, what do you think? Demetrius isn't such a bad guy. It'd be cool to have kids and not die or be a nun. But Hermia's not having it, right? She's like, I'm not marrying that slime, and I don't want to die, so yeah, screw it. I'll be a nun. And then Lysander jumps in. Lysander's like, hey, Duke, your highness, just a few words. Well, I come from just as good a family as Demetrius, and I got just as good a money, and those two things were everything 400 years ago. I mean, like, they're not unimportant today, but they were everything. The family that you came from and what type of money you had, right? Like what class you were, upper, middle, lower class, what type of job, all that sort of stuff, what kind of life you could provide for a wife. These were absolutely crucial. So Lysander's like, I'm as good as Demetrius in both of these, if not a little bit better. And what else? Hermia loves me and not him, so why shouldn't I get to marry her? And Theseus is like, the law's the law. I mean, good points, but the law's the law. And then Lysander drops it, right? And this is the first time that we see legitimate, heavy on the drama dish. And so Lysander goes, well, also, Duke, Demetrius, he went and sweet-talked and made promises and hooked up with Helena. And now Helena's in love with her, and Demetrius won't call her back. Demetrius won't see her. He just straight curved her, and now she's head over heels crazy about this guy because he sweet-talked her, and now he's coming after Hermia. This is worth mentioning because of the historical context. If in 2020 casual dating is a common thing, in the 1600s it was absolutely unheard of. You got one person for your entire life. You probably found out who they were between 12 and 15. A lot of times you didn't even pick them. Your parents picked them for you. And then you got married somewhere around there, and you had some kids, and you probably died at 40 of, I don't know, dysentery or something. But you got one person forever. You didn't go on dates. You didn't go on group dates and hangs and text and flirt and all this. You got one person forever. That was it. So for Demetrius to go and flirt with, fool around with a girl that he's not married to is absolutely out of the question. So much so that Theseus the Duke, this is the Duke. Imagine like if you live in a city, somebody was like, you know, oh, he made out with her and now he doesn't call her anymore. And the mayor was like, yeah, I heard about that. Right? Like, this is a big deal. The Duke was like, I heard about that. I've been meaning to talk to Demetrius. That's not cool, bro. You can't be doing that. So Theseus decides, hey, I got to have a talk with Demetrius about this thing. I got to talk with Egeus about the other thing. Come on, Hippolyta, let's go. Let's go talk with these guys. Let's have a walk and talk. And so the Duke takes Demetrius, takes Egeus, and takes his wife-to-be, and they all go for a walk. This leaves Hermia and Lysander. And I think understandably here, Hermia is absolutely shook. She is overcome with emotion. Oh my God, my life is over, yada, yada, whatever. She is distraught because she thinks she's about to have to become a nun. And Lysander's just kind of, cool out. It's all right, baby, it's all right. And he says, I got an idea. My aunt is very rich, and she lives in the next city over. She's got a huge house and no kids of her own, and she loves me very much. She would love it if we went over to her city, lived with her, and got married and started a family there. And so Hermia is like, okay. And Lysander's like, all right, here's how we're going to do this. Tomorrow night at midnight, meet me in the woods, because that's where all good plans start. Meet me in the woods in the middle of the night. And then we'll sneak off to this other city, and we won't have to deal with your father or the Duke or any of this nonsense ever again. And she's like, oh, that's wonderful. You're the best. And just as they're finishing hatching their plan, in walks Helena. And now, I want you to know right off the bat that I am aware that I'm going to end up painting Helena in a bad light most of the time. And I will do my best to kind of balance the scales here and show you the good side of her. But Helena is really, really extra. She walks in on 1 out of 10. So Hermia and Helena grew up together. They know each other. Lysander knows Helena. They're all from Athens. They all know each other. They're all cool. And they see Helena walk up, and Hermia and Lysander are like, Helena, what's good? How you been? And Helena's good. What you mean good? Good is when Demetrius liked me and not you, Hermia. Why are you talking to me about good? Good is why does he think your face is prettier than my face? I have a good enough face. Why can't my face look like your face? Why can't he look at me the way that he looks at you? And they're like, whoa, okay. I mean, okay. Cool. Glad you're doing good, Helena. What's the problem? And she's like, you know what the problem is. Demetrius loves her and not me. And she just coming in at a million. And they're like, all right, well, sorry things aren't going good for you. I'm sure it'll work out, pat her on the back and, yeah, all right, great. And they decide to tell her, for some reason, about their plan. And they're like, it's almost like to like comfort her. It's like, hey, Helena, good news. We're going to sneak out of town and literally never come back. So I know you're worried about Demetrius being into Hermia, but we're getting out of town, and so Demetrius is never going to see Hermia again because I'm about to go marry her, so it's all good. Give it 48 hours, and then you got Demetrius all to yourself. And then they smile and give her the double thumbs up, everything's cool. And you get the sense here that Lysander and Hermia are genuinely good people. They want what's best for Helena. Before they leave, They're like, hey, I really hope everything works out with you and Demetrius, and I hope you have a good life, and we'll see you never, so peace. And both Hermia and Lysander leave, and they're planning to meet the next night in the middle of the night in the woods. And so Helena knows about this plan, right? She even knows where they're going to meet. And so she's sitting there. All she's got to do is just shut up for 48 hours, and she's got Demetrius all to herself again, right? But just like every good comedy, that is a comedy of errors, which is exactly what this is. This is a comedy of errors. And when I say comedy of errors, I mean anything that can go wrong will. You almost think about this like a, hey, I even pulled up the picture. A Three Stooges meets like a You're Not situation. It's got all of the drama of the Maury Povich Jerry Springer situation, but it's got all of like the harebrained stupidity of a Three Stooges type deal. And so it's kind of where those two are going to meet. And in Shakespeare's comedies, you get this thing where everything that can go wrong will, yet somehow things work out in the end. Okay? So we need what's called an inciting incident. I'm sure you've heard of that in your English classes. The inciting incident here, you could argue, has already happened with, Egeus invoking Athenian law. But to me, the real inciting incident here, there would be no story. It would just be a couple of lovers sneaking off in the woods and going and living in a different city if it wasn't for Helena being real stupid. So Helena, instead of just letting him go, she decides, I know how I can make Demetrius love me. I'm going to go tell Demetrius about Hermia and Lysander, and then when Demetrius goes to chase them in the woods and confront them, I'm going to follow Demetrius there, and because I snitched on them, he's going to fall in love with me. Easily one of the top 10 stupidest ideas you've probably ever heard in your life. For sure, one of the dumbest I've ever heard. But that's just your first glimpse of Helena really, she is about, you hate to say it like this, but she is a thirst trap, and she is desperate, and she is essentially, sorry to be the old guy here using the cool kid term, but she is the female equivalent of a simp. She will do anything for Demetrius, including degrading herself to just unbelievable degrees, as you'll see later on, where it's just it goes from bad to worse to just straight pathetic, to the point where if you ever recognize someone acting like a Helena in your life, if it's a friend or a family member, I would hope that you have the good sense to grab them by their shirt and shake them and maybe even slap them a couple times about the face and say, what are you doing? Have a little bit of respect for yourself. But Helena represents the inciting incident here, because Helena is about to go tell Demetrius, and everybody's about to go meet in the woods. I guess it's just one of those anything that can go wrong will situations, but the fun is in seeing how it all falls apart. So that's Act 1, Scene 1. Next video, we're going to get together, and you're going to meet the workers. We'll talk about them as a group and as individuals later. They're not major characters, but they're significant enough where they're a big part of the story. And the simplest way to put it is that they are idiots. So if that's not a cliffhanger, I don't know what is. Come back next time and learn about 6 idiots. On Scene 1, next video will be Act 1, Scene 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.